All right, welcome back to part 3. No one has any idea what's going on because I got rattled yesterday. Every now and again, I'll get rattled and have to delete everything, change my entire life, and now I'm just trying to reset it. But we're here again with Camila. This is part 2, technically. We've tried this 3 times because I'm just a disaster out here and
No.
stuttering.
You know what it is? I think by the time we wrap up talking with someone, you realize you actually like talking to people, and then you just want to keep talking. So you bring them back for part 3, part 4, part 10.
I love talking to Camila because, all right, let me fill everyone in case they haven't heard part 1 yet. So, Camila, we went from your whole backstory, right? Growing up, Miami, you wanted to be a doctor. Your mom's a doctor. That's the route you thought. You get into biology, start exploring sort of outdoor ventures. You go to the Galapagos. You come back. You kind of get some pressure to go down finance to give you some time to explore. Now you're circling back, or not finance, consulting. Jesus,
Consulting.
it's all the same in my head. Consulting.
No, it's not.
All right, I'm getting bad looks. Consulting, and now you're like, okay, I got to change it up again.
They're completely different.
I know.
But
I know. It's just me grouping things. So now you're thinking about going back down Bahamas, exploring sharks. I mean, I'm pretty jealous of your life right now, but is that summary okay, Camila? How'd I do there?
Yeah, no, that's pretty much the high-level summary of what we went over last time. I've really only been working in my consulting job for like 10 months, but I'm going to complete the year, going to get there till October. And then I'm going to switch gears again. And yeah, I'm going to head down to the Bahamas.
What is your favorite thing about consulting?
So I actually have an answer that, favorite thing about consulting or just like my job right now?
Your job.
So I have to say, like, truly, honestly, I really love the people that I work with, but I will say that that was kind of a luck thing a little bit. Like, it all depends on your team. Like, so people who are listening who know consulting, and I don't know, maybe finance is like this. I actually don't know anything about it either or the differences, but you work with a team, and like coming in as an analyst in October, I was randomly placed on a team. So that can either go really poorly for some people. And for me, I just got so lucky. So like my team is really supportive. They're like really, really great people. Also like really supportive of this decision that I've made to like lead. Like they already know. I've talked to them.
That's super cool.
They think it's super cool. So I would say that's the best part. Like I've met some great people, but I know that that's not the case for everyone.
That was with school because Camila had the unlucky crapshoot of getting on the same floor as me and all our shenanigans. So sometimes, you roll it a couple times, you'll get a good result. Maybe you'll get some good coworkers, bad co-students, whatever you call those.
Exactly like that.
Now, that's pretty cool that you're open to with everything that they know you like experimenting, exploring. And we got into the juicy part about your what helped you open your eyes and the be, do, have method that we touched on. But could you summarize again what your experiences are with it?
Yeah. So basically, I learned about this through this course that I'm taking. So it was explained to me sort of through the lens of finances, like life and finances a little bit, but you can really look at it and like through any lens. So the be, do, have method is the ideal way, but it helps to think about the way that most or a lot of people see it, which is don't have it written down right now, but it's do, have, be. So a lot of people go through life doing this like do, have, be. So thinking I have to do something in order to have something so that one day I'll be something, right? So if you think about it in finances, it's like I need to do something so I can make all this money. And then like once I have it, I'll like be what I want, or I'll be where I want, I'll be happy. You can see it in kind of any lens. But switching the mindset to be, do, have, it's like you first want to be someone, like you want to be who you want to be, explore that. And that's like
which
where
I think is the most important part of
and I almost feel like that's still where I am. Like, not that I'm like don't know who I am. Like, I don't know if I would say that, but I am still being. Like, I'm still discovering, I'm still being, I'm still exploring. And then from that be, you get that, you find what you want to do. And then you have kind of, because it comes to you. So again, if you want to look at it in like making money, it's like people who end up making a lot of money pursuing their passions, even though, I have been told a million times, there's no money in marine biology, or like, if you want to go into health, like being a doctor is the only way you're going to make money. And I'm like,
That's my favorite.
Okay, well, we'll see
It's
how
just
this
not true
goes.
anymore. It's not true anymore.
I know.
Like maybe in the 80s and the 90s. But I think it's so important that B, which is like the self-actualization thing, is what people often say for last. And it's a generalization, but I think a lot of people find that they're on the tail end of their life and they haven't figured out that B portion.
Right.
Which is
That's
like way more important than doing
crises.
things. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's this cool podcast I listened to, I think earlier this week. It was, Simon Sinek. Both of you guys, have you heard?
I hear a lot of people
start with why
about him.
No.
I don't actually know.
He's got a great TED Talk that maybe you've seen it. He has like 3 different rings, and it normally companies approach things as like what you do, how you do it, why you do it. Like they focus on what you do first, but you want to start with why. Like why is Apple doing what they're doing? They're doing it to change the world. Whatever. We'll leave the show notes description so you guys can check out the video. But he is talking with Cal Fussman, who I also want you to listen to another podcast. Camila, I'm going to throw a lot of recommendations at you. I'll figure out.
Email.
Yeah. I'm going to send you a follow-up.
That's what we do in the consulting world.
I know, the real world. Look at that. Okay, so he's talking to Cal Fussman on this one particular podcast, and he's like, hey, I'm an author. I've written all these amazing books, and they've sold hundreds of thousands of copies. But I never identify as an author or anything like that. Like, I don't want to be pigeonholed into what I'm doing, because sometimes I'm an author, sometimes I'm a speaker, sometimes I'm whatever. What he puts on, say, his Twitter handle is optimist. So he's like optimist and author of XYZ books, but that comes later. It's always the first thing. Mm-hmm. And I was thinking about this like with myself, like I'd want like dabbler or something as my title right now, or like for you, maybe it's explorer or something, but you don't want to be the person that's just like, oh, I'm a consultant, that's all I can do. And then you never really venture outside of that.
Right.
I'll leave that again. The whole podcast is awesome, but that is a problem. Like I try and veer away from self-identifying as introvert a lot, because again, you kind of get these railroad tracks mentality versus like, and you have one fixed path versus you can go on a road and go in any way that Belky's mentioned before.
Right. I think if you label yourself, so if we're abiding by be, do, have, and you label yourself an introvert first, you are being an introvert, then I think the other two follow along with that label. And if you don't love that label, then it's harmful.
And people, I don't know. Well, Camila, would you say you're introverted or extroverted, or do you care to? I know it's a spectrum.
I guess I would say, like, if I had to label it, I'm introverted based on like the definition of it. I really like my alone time, and I need to like be alone to recharge, essentially.
Yeah. And what's funny is a lot of people, one, get the definition wrong. And I had a speech on this in school about, it's not, shyness and introversion is completely different. Like You can be outgoing and introverted, and you can be shy and extroverted and whatever. If people, one, get the definition wrong, they're like, oh, I'm introverted, I can never be, say, like Obama, president of the US and whatever, a couple of years ago, but he's an introvert. There are so many countless people out there. And so if you I know I'm going on a long tangent, but just like keeping your options open. Yeah, this is Camila, this is turning into Dylan just talking to himself.
No, but I agree. I mean, I learned that definition like a couple of years ago. I used to be so anti being labeled an introvert, because I was like, no, I'm not like awkward and shy.
Right.
And, I mean, really, like I grew up, even as a kid and now, like I was like I was always loud, and I was always like had a lot of friends and had a lot of friends over and planned things. And like, I'm still like that, but I'm introverted. Like I I don't know. I'm the one who, like, when I moved my first apartment, like, I needed a studio because I was like, I'm not having a roommate again. Like, I just like that my own quiet space. So I
What's
agree.
cool with travel too, like I'll find myself traveling alone a lot, and like partly by choice. Sometimes people are just not crazy enough to do the stuff that Henry and I do, but like that's so cool to me because we talked about it a little bit yesterday. But like going and just meeting people in a hostel. Like I remember I went to Panama just by myself, 18. I had no idea what a hostel was. Just showed up, and you just start meeting people, and
Yeah.
like it, your mind just opens up to all these different opportunities. And I can't. I'm just ranting today. I'm sorry, but but so what would you? Here's my question for you, Camila. If you right now weren't like yourself and you're already kind of exploring whatever, most people aren't. What would you recommend? Like, what have you seen work, or do you think might work for people that are considering this but too scared to go into it?
Yeah, I mean, I actually know a few people who, like some close friends, some acquaintances, just like I've had these kinds of conversations with a lot of people, and um just people that I've talked to that have like these dreams of doing that, but their mindset, I think at the end, like it comes down to kind of the mindset of it. Like their mindset is that that's like a far off dream, like an unattainable dream. Like, everyone has that one thing that they dreamed about doing when they were little, and it's like, you don't actually do it. My mindset, honestly, is like, why not? Like, I don't know. You could say, like, some people might describe me as like, oh, that's unrealistic, it's not practical, and like that's fine, say what you want. But I don't know, I have like all these weird kind of crazy dreams that I like would want to do, and they're really like all over the place, and I kind of do think, why not? I do say that, though, I will caveat, I am privileged and I'm lucky enough to be able to do that, because I understand that for some people making money is crucial. They need it because they help provide for their family, and like they need to stay in this job. That is different, and that's kind of separate. The people I'm talking about right now, and maybe speaking to, whatever audience like who's listening, are people who they don't have to be making the money to provide for their family. They are well positioned, as I am, to explore if they want, but they really just don't. I think that they just don't see that as like a realistic thing. And I don't know necessarily what makes it, like what made me see that differently. Maybe it was my experiences of living abroad. Like I've already done some things that when you say them, like I know how it sounds to say, I lived in the Galapagos for a summer doing scuba diving, marine biology research. Like people are always like, what? Like that's crazy. And I'm like, yeah, I guess, but I had the opportunity to do that. And that showed me like those kinds of things are possible. Like you see all these things, social media is crazy, but couples that pick up and move to Hawaii with like no money, and like people are like, wow, that's such a dream. And I'm like, yeah, but those are real people doing that. Like
Right.
you're a real person too. Like, so yeah, I'd say it's all about mindset. It's like, really, you just have to think to yourself, like, do you want to take the risk? Like for me, the risk of staying right now at my like 9 to 5 desk job is bigger than me taking the risk and just like doing something completely different.
That's what it comes down to. It's risk aversion.
Yeah.
Dylan, we talked briefly about is one of these people asked someone like, if you had $1 million, what would you do? And the person's response was, well, I'd rent a motorcycle and drive across Thailand. And the fact of the matter is, you don't need $1 million to do that. You need like a couple hundred, honestly. So it's like, what are you waiting for? It's risk aversion, really.
Yeah, I think it's important that we did caveat it with like, hey, if you don't have to support your family or you don't have an insane amount of debt. Actually, MC, who Camila from Miami, etc. She was asking me, she's like, I have the opportunity to live at home. Should I do that and then maybe save some money so that I can now explore? And we didn't fully get to break all that down, but I think that's so underrated. Is like, sure, your status, like Henry and I are both at home. I don't know Are you at home right now, Camila, with your
Now
family?
I am. Yeah, when because of everything going on, but I did have an apartment in DC that I was paying for, and I could have like gone back but yeah, I'm living at home now, and I mean continue, but I'm agreeing with like the path that you're on for sure.
Yeah, and I think for some people it makes sense. Like I want to be in a city. That's my goal. I did that whole thing too. Um, but if you have this big excuse of, oh, I have this debt burden or this financial burden, then all right, for 6 months, just maybe you live at home, especially now when you can save the money, and then that gives you some more flexibility to go on these adventures. And I think that thing you said with risk of like it's a larger risk to stay in the same spot. Like people don't internalize that. They're like, oh, there's so much uncertainty, there's so much risk out there. Like, what if I don't find a job? Well, what if you end up 80 and sad about the life you just lived for the last 60 years in the workforce? Like,
Yeah. Yeah, there's this quote. It's kind of cheesy, but it's exactly what we're saying. And it's like, I may misquote it a little, but it's basically like there came a point for where the risk of staying closed in the bud was greater than the risk it took to blossom, like talking about a flower. And I mean, it's true. Like it's about, in the end, it's about that. And like going back to your point, and people who are kind of maybe weighing those options of living at home and saving some money so they can then explore. Yeah, it's a little about priorities. And I think that everyone, we know everyone's a little different and priorities are different. So some people just have no interest in really, and I don't think this is a lot of people, but some people don't have as much of an interest in traveling and exploring and getting out. Fine, you do you. But I also agree, like it's just weighing your priorities at that point, kind of.
so your priority, sorry, Henry, I know I've been talking a lot, but what is your priority? Number one is just exploring, still trying to find like who you want to be. And it's kind
Yeah.
of through doing that you find it. So it's a little bit of a
Yeah.
chicken and
Yeah.
egg, but
Yeah. I mean, I would say that's definitely it. Like, it's interesting when people talk about like, where do you, like, what do you want to achieve in the next 5 years? That like classic question. And for me, it's like, this may not be like a thing that you achieve that you can see, but what I used to just hate that question and be like, I don't like, why do you ask me that? I don't need to know that right now. But what I've started answering is just what I want to achieve in the next 5 years. Like, what would be my goal is to like figure out what I really like, what really drives me, what I really love, what I really want to do. And I have a lot of passions. It's not really that I'm trying things that I like don't like or that I don't know what I'm passionate about. I'm just really interested in like a huge broad range of things. So my goal for the next 5 years would be like figure out like explore all of them, try them all out, and like see which one calls to me more. And I did that through college too. I thought like through college, taking all these different classes, I thought that's what I was doing. I was like, oh, I'll just get a taste of everything and then, I'll figure it out. But that wasn't experience. So now here I am doing that after.
Scott Adams, who does the cartoons for Dilbert,
Mm-hmm.
he has this idea, and I agree with it, where like you want to have all these different interests, and then you have strengths and maybe like a handful of things, maybe like three things or so, and then you find the intersection of those, and that's where you can be the best in the world at that intersection. So that's why I think it's so valuable, even though like, oh, well, Camila, what are you doing consulting, and now you're going with sharks and marine biology? Like, what? How does this connect? Well, you'll find the intersection, and then you'll be the best in the world at it. And then
Yeah.
who knows? Maybe you're like
That's
the
right.
National
There's
Geographic.
there's high competition to be the best at one thing, right? To be like the best computer programmer. You're probably not going to be that. But to be top 10% at three things, that pool of those people is like nothing compared to
Yeah.
one thing. So if you're a marine biologist, consultant, adventurer, like those people don't exist.
Yeah. So it's actually, this is like perfectly like the conversations I have sometimes, honestly, with my mom all the time, just because she's the person I see the most at this point in time, is kind of that. So my two big like passions right now and like stud academically and now like as I kind of explained are like I'm really into like health and wellness, and that's where you see like on my social media all that like fitness and health stuff, and I'm like going to get a health coach certification, and also like this marine biology, outdoor adventure science world, or like outdoor science world. Even like no one would ever think of a job that combines the two. Like I remember one time someone actually kind of recommended this seriously, and I laughed a little bit because I was like, that's not what I mean. Someone was like, oh, you can be a nutritionist for like animals. And I was like, you're trying too hard to force something that's like not gonna happen. But basically, I mean, like I think about that all the time. And I think that like I don't have an answer yet and how I'm gonna do that. I mean, if I did, then we wouldn't be having this conversation. But that would be ideal. Like whether it's doing one and something maybe a little on the side, or whether there's a way to combine those somehow. It's not really being done in an obvious way. It's not like going to med school and being a doctor. Like it's going to have to be something that's not really there yet. And so my like goal would be to figure out like how that's going to work, how I'm going to do that. And then, work to like make it a thing. I guess you could say like be the best at it. Cause I would probably be one of the first people doing it.
Maybe like scuba diving aerobics. Dylan would sign up.
I thought about
I would for sure.
Retreat style thing. I thought about all kinds of stuff, but like a retreat where you like, I have a wellness retreat, and it's like outdoors, and it's like kind of like mental well-being and also working out. I don't know. Like Dylan and I have a list of a lot of things, but
right. Dylan and I have talked about that, like, because we go on these trips that are like really high impact, bopping around, never in the same place for more than a day. And we're like, well, what if we just led those trips, took everyone's cell phone, gave everyone a disposable camera? Like that's a marketable thing.
Please hire me if you guys do that.
Yeah, right.
I'd love to work there. I'd be there.
I think that's what's awesome too is like at this point you're comfortable. I'm sure traveling, you've been in just precarious housing, like that's not the best or whatever, and like you're okay with not having this penthouse lifestyle, but that's not the goal. That's not your priority. So it allows you to do these awesome things, unless maybe they have Bahamas, like some awesome little hut or something that you can stay in. I'm not sure, but I do think that's critical, is like being okay with, it's that voluntary simplicity, being okay with like not the best resources.
That changed for me when, right. So I had all these experiences, and then I went to Nepal, and when I was in Nepal, I was staying with a good friend. Actually, it was my 5th grade teacher. He has a family, whatever, doesn't matter. He lives there. And I just realized like they had so little. And then I got so incredibly sick. And I felt like, holy, like if I can do this at this standard, like without so much of the material, so much of the consumption, and also like my life was flashing before my eyes. It like I'm being hyperbolic, but it was pretty bad. I realized like I could be comfortable anywhere with anything. You realize, Dylan, like I'm sure Camila, you have the same thing. When you go backpacking, we've talked about this too, and you realize like you can survive with the stuff on your back and a pack of ramen twice a day. Like you just realize that, okay, I don't have to chase the money to be happy. I can be happy with so little. And that's, we've talked about it before. It's called voluntary simplicity. And I think it's something.
I sometimes think even happier.
Yeah.
Like I will say, like at this job, a lot of people think I'm crazy because I'm like leaving a very good amount of money for someone who our age, and the funny thing is that because I don't even want to say I was so unhappy, but because my life was a lot of like 9 to 5 work, and then I was living in a city, and like kind of what you do for fun there is just like go out to brunch and then go out and shop. I was spending all of it. Like I was spending all of it on expensive rent. I was spending all of it on shopping because I didn't really know what else to do. Like it was just, I almost feel like I would have more money if I weren't working at this job. I mean, maybe that's not necessarily true, but yeah, I've been happier in situations where exactly that I'm backpacking with the money doesn't even matter than like while you're doing it.
And that's the thing with wealth really quick is if you go from working a job for $10 an hour to $20 an hour, working your whole life up to a point where you make $1,000 an hour, whatever it is, in each of those steps, you're just upgrading your lifestyle to that wage. It sounds like this was happening to you. You made all this money and it was just going towards like spending things and going out with people. Versus if you get happy making nothing or making very little now, then you don't have that same kind of path toward upgrade when the money starts coming, maybe in 10 years or 20 years or 50 years, whenever your wealth appears. And so then you have all this money and you don't have any need to upgrade your lifestyle because you're content with practically, very little. It seems like that's a better place to be.
Yeah, I absolutely agree.
I wish they taught this in Principles of Econ in college, where this opportunity cost, like everyone is like, oh, all right, I have this awesome high paying consulting job. The cost of giving away X amount of money a year to go and just like not make half of that. Like, why would I ever do that? I'm losing so much money. I just paid for this expensive degree. Like, and I don't need that to get there. So a lot of people fall into that fallacy of, oh, it's the sunk cost. Like, just do what's right for you right now going forward.
Mm-hmm.
It's awesome that you don't.
I think we need more like MasterCard commercial in people's lives where like they're like, oh, going to the store, $10. Oh, getting a phone, 50, whatever. And then like this life experience, priceless. I think what we don't talk about enough is, yes, maybe you have a high paying, a good, stable income here now. But what about the cost of not going to the Bahamas for 6 months, which you could put, I mean, you can't even put a price tag on it. It's so priceless. And I think people are trying to put price tags on everything. And the price tag for not going to the Bahamas is, well, minus your consulting salary. And you just can't do that.
Right.
People don't value their time enough. So what right now, Camila, it seems like you've already made the decision. Like, what is scary for you? Like, is anything scary? Like, where's the risk? Do you feel like you're taking risk anymore? Or is it just like,
yeah, I mean, definitely. I think I occasionally think about this. I'm mostly excited to go, but 6 months is like a long time and a short time, right? So like April 2021 is going to come along and everyone, not everyone, but people ask, and I ask myself like, okay, so what then? Like, are you just taking a sabbatical from your consulting job? And I'm like, no, I'm leaving it. I know I don't really want to go back, although I'm happy I had the experience. So I guess that's where definitely the fear lies. And it's kind of an obvious one, is like, when I get back, I really don't have a plan. And I've thought about a lot of things I could do, but one of the reasons I don't want to make a plan is because I don't know what the experience is going to be yet. So kind of like what I talked about, the last part where I talked about how, people are asking, oh, does this mean you'll go to grad school? Does it mean you'll go into marine biology? And I'm like, no, I don't know. I don't know. Like, maybe I go down there and I just want to leave the opportunities open. I may meet someone who's doing some really cool work and want to come back and go work with them. I may, I'm hoping to keep a blog while I'm down there. I may get really into writing. I may decide I want to go to grad school. Like, I don't want to plan because it's going to limit me. So that is where it's scary though, because it's still hard, even though I know that rationally, like, it's still hard to have it be so unknown, but in a way it's also really exciting.
And you'll figure it out, right? If you said today, well, I'm going to go to grad school when I get back, then for the 6 months you're there, I think you'd be hindered in a lot of the things you do, or putting a foot into one door or one opportunity, because you're like, well, I'm just here for this 6 months and then grad school. Versus having no plan, it's like the world and the Bahamas are your oyster, and something will speak to you when you're there. Dylan, what's so funny?
Yeah.
I'm excited. I'm excited. All right. I remember another podcast that I'm going to send to you in an email.
You do anything but listen to podcasts?
I do absolutely nothing. You'd think we'd have a better podcast, but technology, I got to listen to some more of those. But here's the podcast. Cal Fussman, Tim Ferriss show. I think it's like episode 145 or something. This guy, Cal Fussman, he what's the magazine? Starts with an E. Esquire. Yeah. Big column in Esquire. He'd interview some of the best people in the world, like most notable people. But for 10 years, I'm kind of spoiling it, I guess. Whatever. 10 years, he just backpacked around the world just meeting people on a bus or a train or something, like a grandmother on a bus, be like, oh, whatever, just strike up conversation. Oh, can I by chance sleep on your floor tonight or on your couch, or do you have anywhere? Like, can you house me tonight? He did that just constantly every single day for 10 years. And it's just this crazy journey, but it's mostly like people recommending, like he goes over, has an awesome dinner with the family. They're like, oh, you should stay at this house. And he just house hopped for 10 years because he
That's
just
crazy.
didn't have a plan. And he left all his doors open, and it's insane.
Well, now you could do that on Airbnb and Craigslist. Well,
and couch surfing when that existed.
Couch surfing, right? But that's super cool.
People are cool with that. Maybe traveling isn't as easy.
Those are the best experiences too, right? Because you ask someone. I probably wouldn't do that, but he does that, and then they bring you home and like cook you this family meal, and everyone's sitting around talk. Like, that's just super cool. I read a book about this guy who ran the whole length of the Great Wall, and every night he would head off the wall into the local farm towns and just like find a place to sleep, and it helped him learn his Chinese really well. And it's just a cool thing. I think people are kinder in general around the world than they're made out to be. We talked about that briefly yesterday.
Funny now because, sorry, Camila, we're talking a lot, but
no, I love it.
I know you went to Italy after graduation, right, Camila? I don't know where you went.
Over Europe.
Oh, somehow we didn't cross paths, but we're in similar places. But in Florence, I screwed up and I bought a fake hotel. We got there, they're like, hey, we don't have a stay for you. And whatever, I had Ais and Tom, two of our friends. And I'm like, guys, I fucked up. There are no other hotels in the city because like Coldplay's playing. So everything's booked up. We had to go sleep in like this orchard, just in the middle of a farm, just us three like huddled together. I woke up with like a spider crawling over me and it was just freezing cold. But now I'm like, dude, there's nothing like I would do that Great Wall. And Henry texted me. He's like, dude, we have to run the Great Wall. And I'm like, all right, fuck, let's try it. Like I'm
no,
down.
You said no. You said
that's because we've already been to another country. I want another country because we've already been to the Great Wall.
It's only one Great Wall.
But like I'm okay with that because I realize I've told this story now like 10 times, whatever. There's the value of just cool experiences, being an interesting person, like you talked about yesterday, Camila.
Yeah.
It's so
Here's the thing
underrated.
too. A lot of people in our circumstance, in our circles, are obviously scared of homelessness, right? You experienced it one night. It was voluntary, but you experienced it. And you realize, like, wait a minute. I was alive the next day. It was okay. And it's a funny story, at least in that vein. But when you're, like, forced into those circumstances, you realize, like, oh, okay, the world isn't that scary. We made what we could out of it.
Yeah. So, Camila, I know we've just been preaching all this stuff. Is there anything that you wanted to cover that we haven't gotten into, like stuff that you talk about with your mom or with friends that you think there should be a big billboard that says this that we haven't talked about or something like that?
No, we've covered some pretty good stuff. Honestly, I feel like I spent a lot of time kind of talking about this, like this idea of like just going for things, I don't know. I mean, I go back to that question you started to ask kind of about to kind of speaking to the people who may have this like itch to get out of a situation they're in, but feel fear about it. And also, you hear all the time those things of like, think about what your 5-year-old self wanted. And like, hardly anyone's doing that. I mean, my 5-year-old self wanted to be like an Academy Award winning actress. And like that, I actually,
not too late.
That changes. Like, I don't really want that anymore. But, another like big dream, like if I just had to say one thing that would be like super cool, like I want to be a famous National Geographic photographer. Am I even a photographer? Not really. But like, could I be? Maybe. I don't know. Like, we'll see. But I don't know. I guess I would just tell people like, don't necessarily give up on those dreams. Like, even if it's not going to be like a Nat Geo photographer, like, I don't follow it. Like, why not? We forget that we're only 23. Like people forget it. I think people forget that we're just only 23. Like, there's time.
There's time. We forget we're 23, but also I think a lot of people forget and don't know how improbable it is that you're even here on this planet alive, breathing today. Like the odds were stacked against you. Talk about like risk and failure. Like you made that cut. So to not at least use the time in your 20s, if you can, to do what you can with like this small sliver of time we have in the universe. I know this is like existential, but it's like, it's okay to be looking for a job when you're 30. That's not too late. You'll work till you're 70.
That's the Kevin Kelly podcast, because he didn't get a job till he was 35 and then co-founded Wired. So
but I was,
if you have any good
you sent me a Gary Vee
there are
the other
so
day.
many examples of that. My mom is really into Madeleine Albright's book. She didn't start her career until she was in, I should know the age. It's like either 40s or 50s.
Yeah.
Like she had a family, did all these things. And then now she's Madeleine Albright. Like,
it's never too late.
I'm always so excited. So I'll send you all the recs again.
Please do.
Kevin Kelly.
Oh my gosh, the notion, we've talked about this really quick and then we'll leave. But the fact that people are wrapping it up at age 55, like, what do you mean you're wrapping it up? You got 20 productive years left. If knock on wood, you're in good health. But to be like on your way out the door at 55 or 57, I think it
unless it's to start something else that's a dream of yours, it's really cool.
Right.
And
and then I said the founder of Impossible Foods, he started that when he was like 65. Look what Impossible Foods is going to be. So
that's why I like Camila right now. Just you have the 5-year just open plan. Like this is just your exploration period. Oh, that's so awesome. And you're not worried. Like you'll find a way to survive. We're not going to die. We already hit the life lottery. Like everyone's like, oh, I want to hit the financial lottery. Well, you already hit the lottery. Like we're here. We have all this opportunity. Just appreciate what you have and see if you can make an impact somewhere.
Yeah.
So, all right. Thanks again, Camila.
Thank you.
This is going to get me jazzed up the whole day. So.
Good.
Go out and do today.
All right. Be, do, have.
Be, do, have.
Okay. Thanks, Camila. See ya.
Why